Seriously, you're not connected.
Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing Facebook Live. We're in the garden again today. Or we having an issue? All right. Well, anyway, we're in the garden today. Our snow has almost left our garden. We still have some icy, frozen spots, but things are starting to wake up slowly. We've done a lot of our cutting back and that and clean up sort of for spring, as much as we do anyway. You know, we tend to keep a lot of the debris on the garden, chop it all up. That makes a mulch layer for us. That helps keep the weeds down, keeps the moisture in. We never disturb the soil. But today, anyway, we're here behind a great big Annabelle hydrangea. So Annabelle hydrangeas are one of the old-fashioned types that probably most people know. They get the great big heads that often flop over, but are quite showy. So I'm going to show you a couple of little things with the Annabelle today about how to get it to not flop over, how to get the plant to sort of be its own trellis. So we're looking at this plant now. It's several years old. It has never had much pruning done to it. So we can do a couple of different things. We've got some really old stems, and you can see them. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it out with that sunshine, but we've got some really old stems that are kind of grayish here. You see these ones here? These old stems are kind of gray, really not doing much for the plant anymore. So some of those can all just be taken right out. I can show you better on this one, I think. We got some of these old stems here that are really not going to do us any good. So we'll prune those right to the ground, and we'll look for a pair of buds just above soil level, because they are going to come back from that base. So we've got these really long, see these old twiggy shoots that really are just kind of useless now. That's what we're going to get rid of. There's a few more of them here. We're going to get them out. There's a couple in here that are... You need to do this with a lot of shrubs about every 3 years or so, because you don't want these old ratty stem pieces to get in the way of a good shrub. And really, with many of the flowering shrubs, you don't want your top growth to be more than about 3 or 4 years old. The roots could be decades old, that's fine, but you want to keep the upper growth young. So we've taken away, there's one more we can go. We've taken away those yucky old stems. Get rid of that filipendula there. And that's left us with a structure of the stems that bloomed last year. Now, if you want enormous heads of flowers, then you can take these stems all the way back, just like we did with the old useless stems. If you do that, you're going to get extremely vigorous growth from the base. It's going to come up, it's going to get quite tall. You're going to get very large flower heads that might be too heavy for the plant to hold, so you're going to have to stake them up. A good way to treat your Annabelles is to look at where you've got last year's stems. We've got some nice sturdy stems here. So instead of taking them all the way back, we'll just take them back about a third, prune them just above a pair of buds, and we can sort of stagger that height a little bit of each one. That one's got that weird twist there. We'll get rid of that. So if we stagger them all a little bit, then what we've got is we've got nice structure here of stems. And these stems are going to act a bit like some support for the flower heads. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to get new shoots growing off of these, but because you're leaving the old stem there, the growth won't be as long, the flower heads won't be as big, but you'll get more flower heads, so they'll be just as showy on a shrub that stands up by itself. So if you look at how I've done it with this one, I really didn't do any pruning last year other than clean up the old flower heads. So we had lots of flower heads, but they're a bit smaller. Works out for me perfectly. I'm perfectly happy with that. But this shrub is ready for a cleanup. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to go in and I'm going to get all these old, really old stems out of here. And we'll get this guy back in a little bit better shape for this year. There's actually a group of 3 here. So we'll go in and get some of these really old stems out. Because generally when you're pruning shrubs, in most cases, that's one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to get rid of all that old, twiggy, gnarly sort of growth because it's useless now. It generally doesn't bloom well. It doesn't look as nice. And just is a little bit annoying. So we're going to get in there. I got about 3 or 4 more I can get here. So it's all that old yucky stuff. Look at that old twiggy junk. That's really no good. I got maybe 2 more I'm going to take out.
It is good for your twig fence.
This is all going to go on the twig fence. We'll talk about that another day. Maybe next week we'll look at that. What do we do with all these prunings that we take off? We do not bundle them up and let them go to the township to look after. So there we go. We're back into our bigger structure now. So we're going to go, we're just going to take these big stems back part way. And if you sort of stagger the height of them, you'll have a well-shaped shrub with lots of interest. Remember, we are cutting some of these stems back, so we're going to get a lot of fresh growth from the base. Because next year, the stems that we're looking at right now are the ones we'll probably get rid of. So there we go, back into shape there now. 1 more to tackle. We might as well get all 3 of them done. We'll get the old extra twiggy stems out because they're not doing us much good. And then we'll take last year's stems back about 1/3. There we go. 3 Annabelles. This is the pink, one of the pink flowered Annabelles. But 3 Annabelles ready to go for this year. This group of stems are going to hold up the flower stalks. We won't need to stake it. Very quick and easy job to have a beautiful looking Annabelles for your garden for this year. We got any questions this morning, Laura?
So Jeff, Deborah would like to know, when should she prune her Pinky Winky?
Okay, so Hydrangea Pinky Winky is a paniculata. I don't have one close to me in the garden right now, but Pinky Winky, Limelight, vanilla strawberry, there's a ton of them. They're the panicle hydrangea. The flower heads are sort of in a cone-shaped head. You prune them right now, and you can prune them very similar to what I've just done. Or you can just take the flower heads off to a set of good buds and let them grow from there. The same thing will happen if you take your Annabelles or your panicle type hydrangeas and cut them right to the ground. They come up with extremely vigorous stems. They get very tall. The flower heads get huge, but you've got to be careful because they'll get so big that you can break stems and just, you know, it's neat to see it, but it's not really great for the plant. But you can rejuvenate them like this, and they will bloom this year. Generally, the panicles we allow to grow into a good structure, and then we're just taking off maybe the top 6 or 8 inches in most cases below the flower heads. And you do that now. Get rid of those old flower heads now while everything's dormant. The ground is still frozen. I can walk around in the garden today. It's great. I don't have to worry about stepping on things. So it's a good time to do that sort of pruning. And lots of other pruning too. And we'll look at that maybe next week. We'll look at a bit more pruning. We'll look at what we do with our leftover debris that we cut off our trees. And we'll go from there. But any more questions?
Sophie wanted to know about the, I think she means leaf eater moth on arborescens hydrangeas. The moth does not bother other species.
There is a moth, and Sophie's right, and it can be problematic some years. It's an interesting little moth. It lays its eggs, I think, on the new shoots of hydrangeas. And what the larva does, or the little caterpillar or worm, it basically takes the 2 leaves that are protecting the emerging flower bud, and it sews them together. So they're cupped like this, and they will not open, and the flower buds will not form in there. Now, I've done a lot of stuff with a hedge over a number of years by cutting some of them off, not doing it with anything. I find that probably the easiest way to do it is just to go along your hedge, and if you see those leaves at the tip of the stems, the tip of the new growth fused together, just tear them open. Not tear them, just sort of pull them apart, and then that little worm is exposed, and you can get rid of him that way, or you can just leave him for the birds to eat. He will eat a lot of the flower buds off if you leave him alone there while he's growing, so he's going to certainly damage your flower show, but you don't need to cut them off. You don't need to cut it back. If you do that, you will still get some bloom a little bit later, but I think just going along and opening the leaves up so he's exposed and he has no protection. Spraying is useless because he is hiding in that little cupped in leaf cocoon that he makes, so you can't spray. So you just got to physically go through your Annabelles and get them out that way.
Mary would like to know when she should trim her Weigela and 9-bark.
So the Weigelas and the 9-barks usually are spring blooming or blooming on old wood. So if you want to enjoy their flowers, you wait till after they bloom. We're going to do those sort of early summer, midsummer. We're going to get rid of old stems from those kind of shrubs. Now, if you want to handle your 9-bark, your colorful leaf 9-barks in a different way and allow them to just be big foliage plants, if you cut them back heavy now, they send up a whole new mess of great big leafy, very colorful foliage, but you won't get flowers.
And what about clematis?
Clematis, well, you know what? Clematis, now is the time to be thinking about looking at your vines, seeing if you can see new buds growing. So a group 1, you're not going to do anything with. They're the small flowered ones that bloom in the spring. You can do cleanup on them after they bloom. The group 2s, which are most of the large flowered hybrids, will bloom in the spring on old stems, then again in the summer. What you'll do right now is you'll start at the top of the vine, work your way down, find a good pair of buds, and just trim off any dead bits down to that. Let it bloom. Then if you need to do any other work to it, then you can trim it back some more, and then new growth will come and it'll get some flowers on it. Your group 3s which are a lot of your smaller flowered species. Sweet autumn clematis, for example, clematis recta, a lot of the small flowered ones, and any of your Viticella hybrids. They're group 3s. They bloom on whatever growth happens from spring until summer. So all of the old growth gets cut back to about a foot tall, to a good pair of buds that's about a foot or 18 inches above ground level. That's very important.
So Betty would like to know when she should prune her Rose of Sharon. The bush is far too big for the space now.
So Rose of Sharons are really late to leaf out and are summer to late summer blooming. So you do them now. Now with Rose of Sharon, you can wait a little bit if you want until you see the growth happening in May, if that makes you feel more comfortable. But you can certainly do pruning on a Rose of Sharon at this time of the year. Anytime between now and sort of mid to late May would be ideal. For most shrubs, here's the thing. If it blooms in the spring, you prune it after it flowers. If it blooms in the summer, you prune it now. Basic rule of thumb that will get you through just about any sort of do I do it or don't I do it.
And Rosalind would like to know which is more successful, propagating geraniums in water or in soil?
Propagating geraniums or pelargoniums can really work both ways. They tend to be dryland plants. They are sort of semi-succulent. We always use a soilless mix, like a Pro Mix or a Berger mix. We always do that. I'm sure people have done it in water as well. You know, if you've got cuttings, try them both ways. See what way works for you. You know, like I say, we always put them into potting soil, and our results are great. But I'm sure somebody will come along and say, oh, I just put them in water on the windowsill and away you go. If you put them in water, you got to remember, you got to change that water every couple of days or it'll get pretty scrungy. So just be aware of that.
And what about evergreen shrubs that don't flower, like yews, etc.?
So evergreen shrubs, now is the time to prune them. And you're going to prune evergreens roughly at 2 different times of the year. You do them now, and then you do them again late spring once they've had their flush of new growth. Now, I don't know, Laura, if we can turn around and get to that yew there, because you're on a bit of a slope, but if we can have a quick look at it, you might have to just sort of hold the tripod, but we'll walk over to it. You're gonna be a little crooked there. So with evergreens right now, you can do a fairly heavy prune. And you can cut back, you know, a fairly heavy bit to bring them back into shape or anything like that that you want to do. And then after they flush out with new growth in June and the new growth is maturing, then you can trim it up to tidy it up. Now, you want to be careful. A yew is a wonderful plant because a yew will regrow on old stems. It'll send out new shoots from all these old stems if I cut it back. So if I were just to take this, and when I prune the yew, you know, if I want to shape it up, any evergreen, I'm going to look for where I have overlapping branches. So I've got this little group here of overlapping branches. And if I go in underneath those and prune out, I'll even do that one. Put it back up there. This is just going to fill out a whole new lush bit of growth here, but we've cut back about a foot or so. So you can certainly do that kind of stuff at this time of the year, and yews will work really well to regrow all this and fill that in. When you get into cedars, that's where you got to be very, very careful. If you prune a cedar back into stems that are too old, they will not regrow. So when you do a cedar, all you can do is sort of take this growth here, you know, and you can prune back sort of like this. But you always just go back to stems that still have foliage on them with cedars. If you do that, you'll be fine. If you don't, you're going to end up with little stems that never leaf out. That's very, very important. But now if you need to do major shaping on your evergreens, now's the time to do it, because then you're going to get a chance to tidy them up a little bit later on in the season.
That's the last of our
That's
questions.
all our questions for today. All right, we're going to get back inside. It's a little chilly out. Plant lists are coming. As soon as our Canadian Succulents Molly gets finished with the one-of-a-kind show this weekend, we'll have our perennial list up for ordering, and the specialty annuals will be out in the next week or so. Oh yes, don't forget, radio show is back. 1580 CKDO, 1580 AM, 107.7 FM. If you Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock. If you can't get that station on your radio, go to their website, ckdo.ca, and click the Listen Live button, and you can listen to the radio show live Saturday mornings from anywhere in the world. Our trips have got like one spot left, maybe two spots. We've had just a flurry of calls for them, so if you're still interested and you want to come with us this year, we've got a very, very few spots left. Go to masonhousegardens.com, click on Garden Tours, see what's up. We will be releasing next year's tours within the next week or so. So I'll keep you in suspense for those ones, and we'll let you know in a couple of weeks' time. For that, that's it for today. Get outside and garden. It's going to be a beautiful day. The ground froze up last night here for us, so get out there, get the garden cut back today while you can walk around it and you're not disturbing things. And we'll see you next week on Let's Get Growing Facebook Live.